What's up, Star Wars fans? It's Analyzing Star Wars here, and today I'm going to be making a YouTube video that actually a lot of people have been asking me to do for a while, and that's why I love the sequels so much. And to be honest with you guys, it's quite a simple answer. Is that entire time frame when The Force Awakens was coming out and Star Wars Rebels was just a brand new TV show, that's what got me, that's really when I started liking Star Wars. When my dad found out that they were making Episode 7, he was incredibly happy. He's like, no way, they're actually restarting Star Wars again, like after the prequels. And so he was like, Mallory, you need to watch this stuff. Like, I need you to catch up on the movies and watch the Clone Wars so that when you go into this movie, you know what we're doing. He's like, I want you to do this with me. And at first I was really skeptical because I was one of those people who never really liked Star Wars. I had no interest in it. I was like, that's so lame. That's nothing, nothing in that interests me. And I mean, clearly just by looking behind me, you can see that's definitely changed. But, and the fact that I'm making this video, but so there was one summer, it was during the summer that my dad told me to do that. So, and it was one day I was terribly bored. So I'm like, okay, Dad, what movie do I start with? He's like, okay, well, you're gonna start with Episode 4, A New Hope. I'm like, wait, why am I starting with Episode 4? And so on like that. And I can still remember asking, okay, what comes after A New Hope? He's like, okay, it's Empire, and then it's Return of the Jedi, and then you're gonna go to the prequels. I'm like, okay, that's a lot to handle right now. But, so I watched those, and I'm like, okay, yeah, they're interesting. I mean, yeah, they're super cool. I like the prequels better than the original trilogy, which, yes, I do think that. I am a prequelist. If you were to put me in one of those, I am a prequelist. But so I'm like, okay, cool. But I mean, I still wasn't really that big of a fan because I mean, they're just movies. But really what got me into it was Rebels. And because I went downstairs one time and my dad was watching Star Wars Rebels. He was watching, I think it's Gaining Rank in season 1 or 2. I think it's season 1, where Ezra's going through the Imperial Academy and they're like jumping on the platforms trying to get to the top, racing to the top. And I'd seen that episode before just streaming on Disney Channel, and I'm like, hey, I actually like this. Like, what is it? He's like, oh, this is Star Wars Rebels. Like, this is Star Wars. And I'm like, this is not Star Wars. Like, what he's like, no. So he's like, yeah, Mallory, I think you'd really like this. So we bought season 1. I watched all of season 1, and then once season 2 came out, we started watching episode by episode. And everything just kind of started falling into place when I started watching Star Wars Rebels. And at the same time I was watching the Clone Wars as well. So not only was had I already watched the movies, I was watching both Rebels and Clone Wars at the same time. I'd fallen in love with Ahsoka, stuff like that. Clearly, I mean, I'm wearing her shirt. So by the time December came around, I was really indulged in Star Wars, and I absolutely loved it. And it was really shocking to me that I would actually like it. But when I went in there, I went in there with this expectation, like, this is Star Wars. Like, I mean, I didn't have the same kind of expectations that older fans had, that my dad had, because I was a new Star Wars fan. I didn't really know what to expect from this. I didn't know George Lucas like I did now, or like any previous older fan would. So I went in and I'm like, and the cinematography was absolutely incredible. I loved looking at the lightsabers. I loved the fighting, Starkiller Base, Leia, Han, and even with Luke at the end. And I absolutely loved it. I loved seeing the Millennium Falcon. I loved walking around, or I loved it when they were walking around Starkiller Base and really kind of going back to that original trilogy era stuff that really reminded me of the Empire. And so I fell in love with The Force Awakens because I thought it was really the cinematography that really brought me in. And then as I continued to grow my love for Star Wars is kind of when I started to really love the storyline of The Force Awakens. So, and then which led up to Rogue One. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really good. Like, the story is really good. And then The Last Jedi. And this is kind of where people start to disagree with my opinion, which is totally okay. That's why I'm making this video, is to explain to you guys why I love these movies so much. But when The Last Jedi came out, I was absolutely impressed with what Rian Johnson did. I think one of the things that I really love as a writer, is I love putting things in a reality perspective in a fictional situation. And And I love what he did with Luke. I kind of making him a recluse, and I thought it made sense when it went into his backstory with Ben and saying he made a mistake. He thought that Ben was going to completely just destroy everything, and he made a mistake. So when Ben kind of retaliated and destroyed everything that he had, brought the house down on him, and completely burned everything, he felt he was ashamed, and he was disgusted with himself. He's like, I can't do this anymore. So, and he thought the world would be better because he made that one crucial mistake that really impacted him. And yes, it's the Luke Skywalker, but I mean, that's such a crucial, like, that's, how do I put this into words? That's such a detrimental thing to do to someone, to make that kind of mistake. I mean, I know some people just playing sports, when they make a mistake in sports, it's just, it completely brings down their entire vibe, and they start to play worse from that. And that's kind of how I really related it to Luke, is he continued to digress from that situation. He's okay, the world's going to do better without me. I just need to leave, because if I'm going to mess up like this, then I'm clearly no good for anyone anyways, right? And of course, I mean, yes, it was the wrong decision. The First Order, not the First Order, the Resistance and the New Republic, they needed him, but he felt differently, and the New Republic thrived for so long. So in a sense, for that time frame where the First Order was just kind of starting, and they weren't all that big yet, he was right. They didn't need him. It was only when the First Order became such a big threat that they really needed him, but at that time he didn't know. He was on Octu, and he didn't know what was going on. You know, he completely isolated himself. And I really like that realistic point of view from Luke. There's definitely some things I disagree with in that movie, with, like, for instance, the lightsabers. I don't exactly like what they did with that, but I can see why he did that. There are kids who are watching this, and that is a comedic moment. It's not for the older fans who are like, why would you just throw your lightsaber? That was your dad's, you know? Like, that's sentimental value to all of us, right? But for the kids, it's like, oh my gosh, like, that's hilarious, you know? So, like, there's different point of views to everything, and I like to look at Star Wars from a positive point of view instead of a negative, where everything that I don't like, I'm going to criticize, because that's going to ruin my love for the saga and the lore and everything that goes along with it. It's really just accepting what I don't like and trying to put meaning to why I like it instead, and flipping that around. And I never really had to do that a lot, but that's one of the reasons why I do like that so much, is because I was able to shift the things that I didn't like and turn them into things that I made sense of and started liking. I had to do that with Rebels too, with the so-called filler episodes, and one of the most prominent ones would be where they go to the mining guild and Ezra uses the Purgle to help them escape. Like, that was such a filler episode to me, but it all unraveled at the end, where those Purgle were actually a major part of the plot line that we couldn't see yet. And that's why I'm looking at this now, is there's things in The Last Jedi that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson worked together on. That was, I mean, yes, they're directed by different people, but they were still involved in the making of those movies. Rian Johnson was on the set of The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams with The Last Jedi and stuff like that. There's just stuff that we don't know yet. So you can't just be like, oh, that's not even Star Wars. Like, yes, it is. I mean, it's Star Wars now. I mean, even if you don't want to accept that, I mean, that's Star Wars, and this is what we're getting now. And that's what I've come to terms with, is even though it may not be what I agree with, it's Star Wars, and I'm going to love it no matter what, because it is something that I take very seriously, and that's something that I even want to do with my life. So I'm going to make ways to like it and find ways to enjoy it and try to see the bigger picture. Like in Rebels, with those Purgle actually ended up saving the day in Rebels and saving Lothal and ultimately getting rid of the bad guy Thrawn for a greater cause. And that's something that I really focus on with the sequel trilogy, that I wish other people would see too, because it's just, they're such amazing movies. You look at like again, cinematography and stuff like that, and even the scripts, the writing, I think it's all really good. And you can compare it to the original trilogy and you can compare it to the prequels, but the problem with that is they're not the same. first of all, the original trilogy, that's classic. Everybody's gonna love the original trilogy because that's where it all started, right? And there's this love with the prequels because it's all about the Jedi and it's all George Lucas, right? But then you look at it, the script is kind of terrible, but that's what makes it fun, is we've made all these prequel memes out of them. But then you go to the sequels and it's just all these hate because it's Disney. Well, you have to look past the fact that it's not George Lucas anymore, and this is the new Star Wars, and it's brought so many good things. I mean, all those books back there I have lined up are incredible books that Disney was able to like bring to the picture, right? And had it not been for George selling to Disney, we wouldn't have everything that we have now. We wouldn't have Rogue One. We wouldn't have Rebels. We wouldn't have Resistance. And we wouldn't have Solo. We wouldn't have this new trilogy. And we wouldn't have a future of Star Wars at all. Like, Star Wars would have been over with the prequels. And honestly, I love what Disney's doing right here. And I absolutely love the way that that Kathleen Kennedy is going with it, and kind of how they're switching to the older public now. And I really love what they're doing, and I love the sequels because of that, because my love started with that, and because it ties back to everything, and you can find parallels between everything from the original trilogy to Rebels, TV shows, comics, prequels. You can find anything in that to resemble that. And I'll leave that with you guys because, I mean, my opinion is ultimately my own. I mean, I'm not trying to change your opinion. And it's okay to not like the sequels, and that, like, it's all opinion based, right? But it's more of, are you going to continue to degrade other people's opinions because you don't like it, or are you going to try to see the positive in everything? And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do, is because it is Star Wars, and we need to learn to love it if we're going to be a fan, right? I mean, Star Wars is absolutely amazing, and that's what I try to do with my account, is I try to share this positivity that I love with the sequels, because you don't get that a lot these days. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe, and then follow me on Instagram at Analyzing Star Wars. Thanks so much, Rebels. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.